Hi, it's Dr. Ron Kaiser here, and today I'd like to tell you a little bit about one of the expressions that I learned while growing up that I still use and may not serve me all that well, but a lot of times when I meet people, uh, I say, "Hi, how you doing?" Uh, every once in a while, and probably too often, somebody responds to it by telling me how they're doing as if I really wanted to know rather than wanting to greet them. Now, I'm going to try and be a little more careful, a little more discreet about how I say that too. But I do think that it raises a point that if the first thing that a person responds to, and sometimes you don't even have to ask, how are you doing, before they'll respond. If the first thing is a response about their medical condition, that tells me something. It tells me that you're defining yourself by your medical condition. And whether it's because your back hurts or because you're feeling depressed or because you're you've got some vague symptoms that no physician has been able to identify, or whatever it may be. I may be interested in that, but probably not in the first sentence, and probably not the way that I like to see people define themselves. Some people have already heard me discuss the importance of not defining yourself by being too old or too young or too emotional. Uh, it's important that you not be so wrapped up in your uh, job and career that that's what you talk about when you introduce yourself. Recognize you're a combination of lots of different characteristics and traits and activities. And if the first thing that you define yourself by is an overall statement that reflects your medical condition, number one, it's going to be a turnoff to some people. Number two, it makes some people uncomfortable because, you know, what can I do about your toothache if I'm not a dentist? What can I do about your pain if I'm not a pain specialist? Um, I like to know people as people, and I hope that I return things the same way, so that hopefully people through these videos and others get to know me a bit as an individual, not just as a psychologist and coach. But I do think that if you that medical issues have a particular place in terms of the self definition, because if that's the way that you present yourself to the world, um, that limits the kinds of interactions that you may have with other people. And more importantly, a patient is a receiver rather than an active person. In other words, for most of us who are not physicians and specialists, we have to rely on others to help us to get better. And that's very valid, but that shouldn't be the thing that becomes the center of our lives, because it detracts from letting us know, well, what else is there about ourselves that other people will find interesting? So again, I know I ask for it when I ask, how are you doing? But and I'll try and find out some better ways of uh, not having this reflexive response when I see somebody. But um, I also think that it behooves each of us to be able to know that uh, the appropriate response for how you're doing is something along the lines of how are you doing too, or it's nice to see you, and how are you doing? Or, I've got a few things to tell you, one of which may be how I'm actually doing medically, but it shouldn't be the only thing. It might take some creativity if you've made medical issues the center of your life, but creativity is part of being human. So try and anticipate uh, that what your response is going to be when you meet people, and let's see if we can try and not make medical issues the center of our lives, not just when we're meeting people, but also in the way that we lead our lives. Think about it. Always interested in your comments. Dr. Ron Kaiser. Looking forward to talking with you next time.